Hi, my name is Steve Hargett. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to be presenting a panel for Thought Bubble Fringe that runs between the 9th and 15th of November 2020. This panel will have Shea Proulx, Montenero, and partway through we will be joined by Umar Ditta, who unfortunately had a few technical problems. Thanks for joining.
So I'm Shea Crew, and my latest book is ABC Monstrosity, which is published through Renegade Arts Entertainment out of Calgary, Alberta, where I live. Or sorry, they're out of Canada, but I'm in Calgary, close by. And I have another book called Alice at Nap Time. Here. But ABC Monstrosity is the one that I did a Kickstarter for because we really needed to jumpstart some sales and publicity during the spring, which is when it came out. Which was a difficult time to bring a book out this year.
Yeah, thank you. Monty?
I'm Montenero, and I write and draw comics. And I've got a Kickstarter going at the moment for Frenemies the Lost Planet with Yishan Lee, which is a science fiction fantasy about 7 rivals trying to find a missing planet before it destroys the solar system. And that's live at the moment. And then I've also written the X-Men and Hulk and various short stories for DC and 2000 AD. And I've done graphic novels for Delcourt in France and Titan in the UK. So yeah, sort of writer and artist, that's my main thing.
Thank you. So the first thing to touch on is the pandemic, to get it out of the way, and how Kickstarter has changed some things for comics. And I think, Shea, you've got the best thing to start with, because your Kickstarter was purely, well, maybe not purely because of, but it was certainly driven very much by the pandemic, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we had plans to do a Kickstarter in advance, but then it turned into sort of our only plan during the spring when the new book launched. And it launched on Kickstarter. It launched late because we were about to get going, and then the Black Lives Matter movement really got going, and we thought, well, we need to give this space. And so we held off for a little while longer. And then, yeah, it was really successful for me, though, just in terms of kind of activating my community around my project. I think they appreciated having a place to go. And then in terms of just, yeah, finding some new audience members, it was pretty successful that way too, about 50-50. And because I did it in connection with the publisher, I'm sure a lot of that, the 50%, was accessed through people that were fans of Renegade already. So yeah, it was pretty essential for me this year.
Yeah. Have you found it Kickstarter being different during the pandemic, Monty?
Yeah, I mean, Kickstarter is busier than ever. It's one of the few entertainments that people can get that is delivered directly to their door, and they can interact with through their computer, and then they've got some spare cash, I guess, because they're not going out and they've had to cancel their holidays and stuff. So I'm expecting that to change when more and more people lose their jobs and things get a lot harder for everybody. But certainly during the pandemic so far, I've noticed most people's Kickstarters have been doing better than they would have done previously. The flip side of that is a lot more people are doing Kickstarters now, because with the comic industry closing down for 3 months, a lot of professional creators decided, well, if I can't earn any money that way, I'll get a Kickstarter going. So you're seeing a lot more projects out there now, and a lot of big projects from people that, you know, have other vast revenue streams coming in.
Yeah.
So that's a double-edged sword. From my own point of view, I found that because I had a bit more time than I was expecting, because other projects kind of weren't happening due to the COVID, outbreak. I found I just had more time to concentrate on the Kickstarter that I was planning to do. So I decided to make it like a fictional part of the comic and the fictional part of the universe that we've created, the science fiction universe that we've created. So the Kickstarter is part of the story in the comic, and every update is in the fictional world of the comic. So every update you get a new bit of story that expands on the story in the comic. So it sort of ties in.
Yeah.
So it just enables me to write like entertaining sort of stories every day and share them with people on the Kickstarter, rather than writing, another update about how the campaign is going and all that kind of stuff about rewards that you see a lot of. And I've got a bit tired, I guess, of writing those. So it's better if you can give something creative at the same time, wherever possible, I think.
Yeah, that actually leads into one of the pros and cons of Kickstarter, and that's the difficulty of balancing or is there a difficulty of balancing the reward levels and stretch goals?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that topic?
Shea?
I mean, I guess I, in some ways, was grateful that my life was so restricted at the time that I was doing it, because I was actually living at a family cabin, so it worked out a lot better for my kids to be able to use a front yard that had a lake on it, rather than just be trapped in our space in Calgary. So I was away from my printer. I just didn't have access to the kinds of services that I would use to create new things for my rewards. So I just cataloged what I had, and it was things like a complete set. I had limited edition zines. I had work that it was just the work that I already had that turned into my extra rewards and extra stuff. So yeah, I was kind of prevented in overthinking it, as I was with even with doing updates and things like that too, because my kids at that time didn't have school, so I was having to teach them and then manage my Kickstarter sort of in the other time that I could find.
We've now been joined by Umar after a little bit of technical difficulties.
Somewhat of a mixed blessing.
Hi, my name's Umar Ditta. Hi everyone. Hi guys.
Yeah.
I am the writer of Untethered and Lad. Untethered is a trilogy about what happens when you drink the contents of a genie, while Lad is a sort of crime horror mix. That's people have said nice things about it, I guess, but yeah, I'll just leave it out there for now.
Okay, thanks. We're just talking about the pros and cons of Kickstarter and the risks of balancing your reward levels and stretch goals.
Yeah.
So, Monty, do you want to come on that?
Yeah, I think the tendency when you start off, certainly what I did, is you have way too much, because you're so worried about people not getting good value or not backing the project, that you tend to kind of I certainly did, a sort of go over the top, and you promise all kinds of amazing rewards and all kinds of variety, and it gets quite complicated to just list all the rewards and sort of describe them to people. Takes ages, and you don't really need to do that. I've found as time has gone on. My campaigns are probably still a bit too complicated, but they've got simpler. I always end up with about sort of 12 different levels. I think they recommend ideally to have sort of like 4 or 5. So, so I'm still doing a bit too much. When you have a lot of stretch goals and rewards and little individual things that people can add, a lot of people get very caught out with postage.
Yeah.
Either because they don't realize that, you know, they set it all up at the beginning to deliver a certain amount of goods, and by the time they finish the campaign, they've added so many levels to the campaign and so many stretch rewards that each package now weighs about 3 times more than it did when they started, or at least half of them do. And when you're trying to mail those from America to England, or England to, you know, Russia or wherever it might be, I mean, my campaign goes to about 70 different countries. It gets really expensive to mail that stuff and to get it all kind of printed and packed and packaged and everything. If you're using a warehouse to send out the stuff, they charge you for each item, and they charge you for picking it, and they charge you for packing it, and then they charge you for posting it. So adding an extra sort of 10 stretch goals as your campaign goes on really adds a lot of cost. But then the other way you can get caught out is if you've put postage in for each item, but then Kickstarter is not very sophisticated with postage. It just adds the same amount, so it can't really differentiate between 10 items and 1 item. It just keeps adding the same postage each time if you set it up that way, and you can end up. I haven't done this, but I've seen other Kickstarters. They end up overcharging for postage because they've sort of added the same amount on for each item. So
Yeah.
very easy to get screwed up. My advice would be just keep it simple. And if you find that you're going halfway through a campaign and you're feeling like you're not getting enough backers or something, don't panic, and don't start throwing things at your Kickstarter and offering things that you really shouldn't be offering, because it will just mess it up.
Well, I had an interesting alternative to that, because I knew that so many people that I ordinarily would have been able to see at local events and launches during this time, you know, they were sort of feeling, well, why should I have to get this package in the mail and pay for shipping when I'm sure I'll just see her soon. So
Yeah.
I offered a no shipping option to people who are really local, which I would recommend to people who are starting from a really small base and aren't shipping to 70 countries necessarily yet, because there was a popular option on my campaign. We were all really optimistic and hoping, you know, that we'd be able to get those things to each other. Like I thought I'd see people sooner, and now I'm still waiting to deliver a lot of that stuff. But I mean, in an ordinary time, I would have just seen these people. So
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this, Umar?
Well, mine is, well, similar to what Monty said, keeping it simple, and not only in terms of the sort of tiers you have, but also the products that you offer, because there has been issues in the past where like, for example, t-shirts. Always be careful when you have all these extra rewards that you give, where the logistics of you can fit extra prints into an envelope. It may increase the weight, but try stuffing a t-shirt into an A4 envelope, it just won't work. You need special packaging, and also when you have say posters, most people don't want posters folded in half. It doesn't look good, especially when they, you know, A4 above, you know, A3 posters, A2 posters. So you need to get a tube. So there's other sort of logistics things that people need to take into account, where they might be like, oh, we'll chuck in a poster and some t-shirts and maybe I don't know, hats as well, or something to, you know, promote the Kickstarter a bit more. But you might run the risk of it being too gimmicky for the person that they might not be interested in, but also yourself, you might struggle in actually saying the postage is set at a set amount, and struggling to be either on budget or even you know, not cost too much of your money to get the stuff out to people. So I would say really be careful with that stuff. And it's when it comes to like the Kickstarter sort of stretch goals and things like that, keeping it simple is very important, because more often than not, people, even if you just have another print that's added to the collection of prints that you give, the overhead on it, because at the end of the day, you got to think of it as a sort of business sort of term, because you are there to sell your book and make at least some sort of profit, or at least some sort of fan base. There has to be some sort of positive outcome of it. So again, when Monty said, if you're sort of worried about what you're getting in the Kickstarter, you're not getting the numbers you want, you're not getting the funds that you're wanting in like the first 1 or 2 weeks, don't panic, but don't promise people the world that you can't deliver on. So always manage expectations for yourself and for the for your fans.
Yeah, Umar's right. Even small items can mess up your packaging, because if you've got like beautiful artwork and a comic that people want to keep really pristine, if you just put a badge in with that, in the postage, the badge will
I was
completely
thinking badges, yeah.
Yeah, it'll completely mess up the comic, or anything small and quite hard. Unfortunately, no matter what you pay with postage, it will get really banged about, and you've seen how mailmen kind of treat packages. It's not kind.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the packaging on my stuff now is like ninja level. It's so extreme that people actually complain that there's like way too much of it. But from experience, I know that if it's artwork, people want it to arrive like really beautiful and perfect. So you have to have all the cardboard packaging around it, and you have to have bubble wrap, and you have to have waterproof coverings and stuff if you're sending original artwork, particularly. And
Yeah.
you can't just throw in a badge into that. It's like throwing a grenade in and then setting it through a tumble dryer. So you have to think really carefully about what you're going to add together, and basically plan it all out and cost it all out, weigh it all, figure out how much it's going to cost with your mail provider.
Yeah.
And then don't deviate from that. Don't deviate from that plan.
So as a punter, I'm a sucker for badges.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like I always think about how are they going to post that. It's I happen to have mentioned being a sucker for badges on Twitter to in a conversation that the editor of one of you three was actually in on. So I think he might be wanting to throw more badges into Lad.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I get where they're coming from, because there's also been talks of from Carlos, the artist, and Hugo, the editor. We always talk about what we can add in the next Kickstarters and everything like that. And they do have interesting ideas, but unfortunately, when you're the person running the Kickstarter, you take the de facto role as the money man. And you just feel like, you got to be the sort of person who says, that sounds really interesting. Tarot cards do sound interesting, but I don't know how we're going to fit that in within the budget, which is always a horrible place to be. And they come out with some really interesting ideas, but that's another thing that I would say, if someone's planning a Kickstarter, to when you're working within a team with other people, where obviously you're the person who's running the Kickstarter, but you will have all these creative people who are part of the team providing input. Don't be afraid to say it can work, but you'll have to do a bit of number crunching, and it just doesn't work out. And you can always find other ways for stretch goals, and find other sort of rewards to give to people that they still will be after, but it wouldn't cost you as much.
Shea, what's your like most popular reward other than the book, the comic, the book that you've done? What's the most popular?
My most popular item was just a hardcover book. That's really what everybody wanted, and I committed to doing a little drawing, personalizing each one. I think I have one with me. So I filmed myself. Oh, I didn't show the drawing. I filmed myself writing in them and showing what kind of illustrations people were gonna get. Oh yeah, I do have one. So like, we'll just got a little turtle saying thanks.
Nice.
Oh yeah, cool.
This is a book where all the ABC monsters combine as you go. So there's all these animals and foods and things and people's favorite. So just offering a bit of personalization as opposed to something extra. And then I also thought to say too, if people are watching from the United States, they have really, really cheap options for shipping through something called media mail. And if you put anything that's not media in with your media mail, you can find yourself disqualified from using the service. So people who add in a pin or a badge and then still call it media mail can get banned from this whole really great extra. So
Ooh.
that's one thing to be aware of if you're from the States. This is how I send my prints. It's like I buy a prepaid sort of package that includes a bag, cut mat, foam pour. I have to make sure it's always a 5x7, but beyond that, then
That's really nice. Where did you get those from?
It's like matt.com, I think. I can check and I don't know, tweet the name out. Yeah,
it's really nice.
Yeah. So there's ways to make things kind of set up and easier. If I was individualizing cut mat through that company, just even the same website, like I would be paying so much more. But when you buy their set where everything's the same size, then you can get a bit of a deal. So it's like, add $3 to the cost. Yeah.
Cool.
So we've touched on it a couple of times with things that people have said, but the community aspect of Kickstarter, and through your collaborations with other creators and with your interaction with the public. Well, I can't actually think of a really big drawback other than the most obvious ones of getting people pestering you too much. But what's your experience of these interactions, of collaborating and contact with the readers?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Shea.
No, sorry, I was still trying to understand the question a little bit. So, like, what kinds of interactions?
Yeah, what was the benefits really of the community that builds up through Kickstarter?
Well, one of the sort of benefits I get that when you're going through the backer reports, and I'm sure this happened to both of you as well, where you're going through the names and you're allocating who's going to get what reward, and then you sort of notice a name that you've seen a few times before. That's always a nice feeling to have. I know it's one of the small things that you just sort of, oh wait, that guy, he bought my last book, and then you just go back through your previous sort of Excel workbooks, and you're like, oh, they bought all my things. They are what they class as a fan, and that's something you won't. Yeah, you might get people who are coming up to you and say, oh, I'm a big fan of yours, but you're like, wait, this is proof in the pudding. This person has backed me 5 or 6 times in the past, and chances are they're going to keep backing us as I put out more projects, which is always positive. And then sort of numbers that you see of that repeat fans coming in to back your Kickstarter, give you, even in the backer report, sometimes you might put a box that says any comments, and even like something that might take them a moment to like looking forward to the next issue or something like that, really just motivates you. Nice. Absolutely.
Monty, have you got
Yeah, the nicest thing about it is the Kickstarter community is a really nice community, and obviously there's a lot of toxic atmospheres on social media at the moment. And in Kickstarter, I found almost without exception, everyone's very positive, very enthusiastic, and they get really into the spirit of what you're doing because they like the personal interaction. So, and they like, as Shea said, the thing that they really want most is, what they've come for, which is the main comic or the main book. And rewards are usually the best ones are things that just kind of expand on that. As Shea said, you might make it hardback, or you might do a drawing, or you might give them some more pages. So really, those are the best rewards, I think, that expand on the core reason why everyone's come. But they get really into it, and they start asking about the characters, and they start, wanting more and to sort of learn more about the universe, and they get really into the whole kind of backstory of the comic. And there's a comment section in Kickstarter, and there's a messages section, and you get lots of nice messages and requests and things through those, and questions, and you sort of always are answering, and you get to know a lot of these people. and have like a bit of banter with them and stuff, and then through that you can get to know them elsewhere, you know, online in different forums and stuff if they get in touch with you. So that's really nice, because I find that's the best thing about making comics, is having that shared enthusiasm for something you both love. So it doesn't matter that I'm making it and you're reading it. It's like we both love the same thing, and that's like a beautiful part of the Kickstarter. It really puts you close to your audience, which is really great.
Yeah, Shea, do you have anything to add to that?
I was just I was thinking about some of the people that backed me opted for no reward, and I always knew those people from my community in Calgary, and it was really nice to see people doing things like where they put in enough money just to edge up to where they would get a reward, and $1 less, just to be supportive. There was like Patreon accounts and other kinds of things that I supported, you know, as I saw people kind of reaching out, and it was a nice way to just sort of, you know, also just bolster our feeling of community when we were really needing that and missing the Comic Cons that we would usually be having. So that's the thing that popped out to me with that. Yeah.
Thanks. Now, when I do interviews, I always ask at the end of the interviews if there's anything I didn't ask, or any question that hasn't ever been asked of the person I'm talking to. I just thought it might be interesting to, is there anything about Kickstarter that somebody's not asked you about?
I had difficulty and was sort of glad that I was able to overcome some of my insecurities about video and putting things together, because having a video on Kickstarter, they stress, is important. And then part of our rewards was admission to a digital conference. And so I set that up for myself and had to figure out how to do that. And that was a part of it that I hadn't really expected, and really, you know, I was glad I kind of rose to the occasion, especially now as that's becoming more and more a part of our lives. So that was new. Yeah.
Anything new from anybody else?
What I would probably say about Kickstarter is, well, you can't underestimate how important it is to get a sort of like a trusted group of people to, because you can do a preview sort of section of your Kickstarter before you go live. Always get it sanity checked, or even like to make sure that it flows well, because there might be little things that you might have all the information on there, but it might be too much, or the rewards might be too much. Always have, you know, a trusted group of people that you rely on to sort of just review your Kickstarter before you go live, to make sure everything's good and everything's fine. And lastly, don't be afraid to go out there, because yeah, it was a good couple of years before I did my Kickstarter. I was at the 11th hour when I was about to go live with a Kickstarter, I was like, no, maybe not this time. But then eventually you just sort of bypass that mental block. That's sort of similar to what Shea was on about, where you're like, what if this, what if that? The sort of good thing about Kickstarter that there is a safety net for you. So if it doesn't succeed, or if you're not 100% behind it, there's only learnings from there. That's what you get from it. So don't be afraid to go for it, I would say, no matter what you do.
Thanks.
I think the two things I've learned that people might be surprised by looking in from the outside is, one, you don't need a video for a comic or an art book. When people buy a comic or an art book, what they want to see is, they want to see the comic and they want to see the art book. So if you've printed it already, that's the best way. If not, just do a lot of previews. You know, show them the pages, show them the artwork, show them that it's, you know, finished, or nearly finished. So that way people have a lot of confidence that this is a, you know, a real thing, and they're going to get it soon. So I did videos on my first 2 Kickstarters, and then I've done 6 since then without videos, and they've been more popular than the ones that had videos. So I'm sure if you're a brilliant video maker, then videos would be a huge boon to your campaign, but I just found videos were taking a lot of my creative time on the Kickstarter, and they weren't really adding anything at all as far as the number of backers I'd end up with or anything. So you have to, like I say, you have to have visuals, and you have to show people that the project is real and they can read it somewhere, but you don't need a video. The second thing is you need to have like your own audience before you go to Kickstarter. It doesn't have to be big, but obviously however big your audience is, that's how sort of high you should set your target. You should start off with a very small target. Your first time, you're really just testing through how it all works. So you want to start off with a very small target, something very simple. You want to know who your audience is kind of before you start, and then you go live with it. And I think a lot of people get caught out because they think, oh, they see things being really successful on Kickstarter, and they think like, oh, there's obviously like thousands of people just waiting to throw money at projects. But really, the core of your audience is an audience that you sort of bring with you, and then you point them to the Kickstarter, and then they get excited about it, and then they share that news with their friends and other people, and that brings in new people. So it's kind of like a expanding bubble like that. It's a very real thing. It's not like something you can fake, or you can sort of just throw money at and get backers. It's kind of like there has to be an audience, and if you've got an audience, it doesn't matter how small. All you do is you sort of email your friends, you email your people you've worked with, you email people you know like your work, and then you and then you say like, I'm going to do a Kickstarter. Can I email you about that when it comes out? And then that's how you start making a list of your audience. And then when the Kickstarter's up there, then you sort of let them know where the page is, and then that's how you start getting backers, and that's how you start building a sort of reputation on Kickstarter for delivering stuff. And as you deliver stuff, then people have more confidence, and they'll spread the word and stuff. So I think that's an important part of starting out.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, totally. I've seen people do Kickstarters for things just like a small series of patches, or like the kinds of things that somebody at a different point in their career would be offering as a reward, because they still have some of these things. Like you could start just there and have it. I don't think people should be afraid to have a small goal if it's realistic for where they're at. I think people exaggerate how difficult Kickstarter is, because if you have the time to spend on it, can it absorb so much of your time? But if you have a small goal and you just want to meet that, it's really possible to do that if you have a few people who support you. Yeah.
Just another thing on that as well is, one thing I've noticed with Kickstarters is 30-day is normally the best sort of the time for a campaign, for a Kickstarter campaign. It just makes sense because one of the main reasons I think is because you got to sort of pick more often than not when paydays happen, because some people have it at the beginning of the month, some people have it at the end of the month. So these are sort of things that, like you mentioned, Steve, something that people don't normally ask about Kickstarter. These are sort of insights that it's best to have when you're planning your Kickstarter, to make sure that, as well as the sort of 30-day window you have, more often than not, the first couple of days you will see more often than not a massive spike in pledges and everything like that, because that's when people are excited about it, and that's when, because you see it at the graph in the sort of analytics within Kickstarter, where the first 5 days it's a massive incline, but it will plateau. And going back to originally what Monty said a few questions ago, don't worry about that. Do not worry. It will always plateau. Even the most successful ones that are getting thousands and thousands of backers, they will sort of stay at a plateau for a bit. But then the last couple of days, or towards the tail end of the campaign, that's when you will increase the sort of the messages you're putting out and the sort of promotional material, because it's like an old adage. It's pretty much a cliche where, like, when someone has a Kickstarter running, their month on social media or whatever, pretty much their tweets and everything are gone, and it's all replaced by back my Kickstarter. There's no shame in that. You always got to promote yourself, because if you're not going to do it, no one's going to share your Kickstarter. So for that month, really push it hard, but always be wary of not being too negative on like, oh, I'm not getting any pledges over the last week. It will pick up again towards the end.
All right, thanks. Okay, so to wrap up, have you got anything to plug at the moment? What's your current project? What's your next project?
Myself?
Yeah, you can start with you.
I'll start. Well, you can buy my books on Big Cartel. It's Umar Ditta .bigcartel.com. I have Untethered on there, which again I mentioned is the trilogy that I did with Elliot Bolson, Mike Maynard, and Rob Jones at lettering it. It's basically what happens when a guy drinks the contents of a genie's bottle. But what I have coming out, hopefully the next Kickstarter for Lad, my other series I'm doing, which is the sort of the horror crime. So basically, it's very much inspired by what's it called? Dead Man Shoes. Shane Meadows' Dead Man Shoes. That's what I basically like. Just to sort of put it in a nutshell, it's just that sort of gritty sort of crime story there. We're on issue 2 at the moment, which hopefully the Kickstarter rewards should be coming out soon before Thought Bubble. But obviously with sort of COVID restrictions in place, we're working as quick as we can to get the book together and get it out to people. But hopefully the issue number 3 Kickstarter should be coming out fairly soon.
Okay, thanks. Monty, you got going on?
Well, you can find me at Montenero, Montynero. That's on Facebook and Twitter. And then Montenero.com, and also Montenero on Instagram. And then I've got 3 main comics, which are Hollow Monsters, which is my semi-autobiographical comic, which I write, draw, and letter. And then Death Sentence, which is about a sexually transmitted virus that kills you in 6 months, but makes you brilliant at whatever you're obsessed with. It might be writing or art or anything like that. And then Frenemies, The Lost Planet, which is a progressive updating of pulp sci-fi. So you've got a cross between the sort of traditional Flash Gordon sort of action and then a lot of sort of forward-thinking LGBTQ characters and all kinds of cool stuff going on that you haven't seen in the sort of comic before. So that's the one we're doing at the moment with Yishan Lee, and that's a lot of fun. That's going well so far.
Thanks. And Shea?
Yeah, the best place to buy all of my stuff is on my Etsy site, Shea Crew Art Book, and yeah, my website, my Twitter, socials are all my name, SheaProulx, and Renegade Arts Entertainment, which is the indie publisher out of Canada that I did the Kickstarter with, also has a lot of really great titles on their website too. The director there is Alexander Simbo, who was my partner in crime with my first Kickstarter. So yeah, he's great to work with. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, all. Good to see you, and good to have a chat.
Brilliant.
Catch you guys later.
Thanks a lot. Nice to meet you. See ya.
Nice to meet you, Shea. See you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.